From what has been said, it can clearly be seen that the things which are dispensed by divine providence follow a certain plan. For it has been shown that God, by his providence, orders all things to divine goodness as to an end, but not in this way that something of his goodness is increased by what happens, but that the similitude of his goodness, as far as possible, is impressed upon things. But since it is necessary for every created substance to fall short of the perfection of divine goodness, in order that the likeness of divine goodness may be shared more perfectly with things, it was necessary that there should be diversity in things, so that what cannot be perfectly represented by any one thing may be represented in different ways in a more perfect manner. He sees that the concept cannot be adequately expressed by one vocal word. He multiplies the words in different ways to express them through the different conceptions of his mind. And in this also the eminence of divine perfection may be considered, that perfect goodness, what is united and simple in God, cannot exist in creatures except in a different way and through several things. But things are different in this respect, because they have different forms from which they are assigned their species. In this way, then, the reason for the diversity of forms in things is taken from the end, but from the diversity of forms is taken the reason of the order of things. For since the form is according to what the thing has to be, but everything according to its being, must approach the likeness of God, who is his own simple being, it is necessary that the form be nothing else than the divine likeness shared in things. Wherefore Aristotle in Physics 1, speaking of form, says that it is something divine and appetizing. But similitude, considered to be simple, cannot be diversified except according as the similitude is more or less close or remote. But the closer something approaches to the divine likeness, the more perfect it is. Hence there can be no difference in forms except in so far as one exists more perfectly than another. For which reason Aristotle, in 8 Metaphysics, likens the definitions by which the nature of things and forms are signified to numbers, in which the species are varied by the addition or subtraction of unity, as this is to be understood because the diversity of forms requires a different degree of perfection. And this is evident to the observer of the nature of things. For if one considers carefully, he will find that the diversity of things is gradually completed. For above inanimate bodies, he will find plants, and upon these irrational animals, and upon these intellectual substances. And in each of these he will find a diversity according to which some are more perfect than others, to the extent that those which are the highest of the lower kind seem to be close to the higher kind, and vice versa, as immobile animals are similar to plants. Whence also Dionysius says, 7 de divinis nominibus, that divine wisdom unites the ends of the former with the principles of the latter. Hence it is clear that the diversity of things requires that not all things be equal, but that there be an order in things and degrees. And from the diversity of forms, according to which the species of things are diversified, there follows also a difference of operations. For when each thing acts according to what it actually is, for things that are in potential, according to what is of this kind, experiences of action are found. Now each being is actually through its form. It is necessary that the operation of a thing should follow its form. It is therefore necessary, if they are of different forms, that they should have different operations. But since each thing reaches its proper end by its own action, it is necessary that the proper ends be diversified in things, although the ultimate end is common to all. It also follows from the diversity of forms that matter has a different relation to things. For since forms are different in that some are more perfect than others, there are among them some perfect in so far as they are self-sustaining and perfect, needing nothing for the support of matter. Certain things, however, cannot subsist perfectly by themselves, but require matter as a foundation, so that what subsists is not only form, nor only matter, which in itself is not an actual being, but a composite of both. But matter and form could not come together to constitute something unless there were some proportion between them. But if they must be proportionate, it is necessary that they correspond to different forms of different matter. Hence, it happens that some forms require simple matter, and others compound matter. And according to different forms, there must be a different composition of parts appropriate to the species of the form and to its operation. From a different attitude to matter follows a diversity of agents and sufferers. For when each thing acts by reason of form and suffers and is moved by reason of matter, it is necessary that those whose forms are more perfect and less material should act in those which are more material and whose forms are more imperfect. And from the diversity of forms and materials and agents follows the diversity of properties and accidents. For since substance is the cause of an accident, just as the perfect is the cause of the imperfect, it is necessary that from different substantial principles, different proper accidents result. Again, since there are different impressions on patients from different agents, it is necessary that according to the different agents, there are different accidents which are impressed by the agents. It is clear, therefore, from what has been said, that when, by divine providence, various accidents and actions and passions and dispositions are distributed among created things, this does not happen without reason. Hence it is that the Holy Scripture attributes the production and government of things to divine wisdom and prudence. For it is said in Proverbs 3:19, "The Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by prudence he established the heavens. By his wisdom the abyss burst forth, and the clouds swelled with dew." And Wisdom 8, "When it is said of the wisdom of God that it reaches from end to end with strength, and disposes all things gently." And 11:21 of the same, it is said, "You have arranged everything in measure, number, and weight, so that by measure we understand the quantity, or the mode, or the degree of perfection of each thing." Through but the plurality and diversity of species, resulting from different degrees of perfection, but by weight, different inclinations to their proper ends and operations, and agency and patience, and the accidents which follow the distinction of species. Now, in the aforesaid order, according to which the reason of divine providence is attended to, we have said that divine goodness is first, as if it were the ultimate end, which is the first principle in actions. Then, indeed, the multiplicity of things, for which it is necessary to establish that there are different degrees in forms and materials, and agents and sufferers, and actions and accidents. As therefore the first reason of divine providence is simply divine goodness, so the first reason in creatures is their multitude, for the establishment and preservation of which all other things seem to be ordered. And according to this it seems to be reasonably said by Boethius at the beginning of his arithmetic, that all things which were constituted by the primordial nature of things seem to have been formed by reason of numbers. It must be considered, however, that the operative system and the speculative one do in part agree, but in part they differ. Indeed, they agree in this, that just as the speculative reason begins from some principle and by means reaches the intended conclusion, so the operative reason begins from some first, and by means of some means arrives at the intended operation or operation. But in the speculative, the principle is the form and what it is. In the operative, the end, which is sometimes indeed the form, sometimes something else. A principle must always be necessary even in the speculative, but in the operative it is sometimes indeed necessary and sometimes not. For it is necessary for a man to desire happiness as an end, but it is not necessary to desire the building of a house. Similarly, in demonstratives, the latter necessarily follow the former, but not always in operatives, but then only when the end can only be reached by this way. Just as it is necessary for someone who wants to build a house to look for wood. But for him to look for spruce wood, this depends on his simple will, and not on the purpose of building a house. Therefore, that God wills his goodness, this is necessary, but this does not necessarily follow from the fact that it is represented by creatures, since without this divine goodness is complete. Therefore, the fact that creatures are brought into being, even if it has its origin from the reason of divine goodness, still depends on the simple will of God. Now, supposing that God wills to communicate his goodness to the creatures, as far as is possible, by the manner of similitude, from this he takes the reason that the creatures are different. But it does not necessarily follow that according to this or that measure of perfection, or according to this or that number of things. Now, supposing it is from the divine will that he wills to establish this number in things, and this measure of the perfection of each thing, from this he takes the reason that it has such a form and such a matter, and the same is evident in the consequences. It therefore becomes manifest that providence dispenses things according to a certain reason, and yet this reason is taken from the supposition of the divine will. Thus, therefore, by the premises, the double error is excluded. That is, of those who believe that everything follows a simple will without reason. This is the error of those who speak in the law of the Saracens, as Rabbi Moses says. According to them, there is no difference that fire heats and cools, except because God wills it so. The error of those who say that the order of causes proceeds from divine providence according to the mode of necessity is also excluded, both of which are evidently false from what has been said. But there are certain words of Scripture which seem to attribute everything to the simple will of God. These things are not said to remove reason from the dispensation of providence, but to show that the will of God is the first principle of all things, as has already been said above. As it is said in the Psalms, whatever the Lord willed, he did. And Job 11, who can say to him, why do you do this? And Romans 9:19, for who can resist his will? And Augustine says 3, De Trinitate. God's will alone is the first cause of health and sickness, of rewards and punishments, of graces and retributions. And thus, therefore, when it is asked for what is the cause of any natural effect, we can give an account from some proximate cause. While, however, as to the first cause, we reduce everything to the divine will. For example, if it is asked, why is wood heated in the presence of fire? It is said that heating is the natural action of fire. And this, because heat is its proper accident, and this results from its proper form. And so from there, until it reaches the divine will. Hence, if someone answers to the questioner why the wood was heated, because God willed it, he answers appropriately if he intends to bring the question back to the first cause. But it is inappropriate if he intends to exclude all other causes.